G'day guys, how you going? It's Aura here with another video in the continuation on of our series where we're covering all of the Shadowlands dungeons and how best to tackle them healing wise. So without further ado, we'll jump into it, and today we're looking at Halls of Atonement. Now Halls of Atonement is in Revendreth and it has 4 bosses. Before you can start the first boss, who is Helikas, the sin-stained Goliath, you first need to venture around the map and kill the other Goliaths that infuse him with the anima power to then become targetable. So whilst you're doing this, do note that these mobs do use an ability called Thrash, which puts out large AoE damage to the whole group, so just note and be ready for that for some AoE healing. So after you've done that, Helikas will become targetable. Now the first ability we'll talk about is Crumbling Slam. So this is where the Goliath slams down 6 yards in front of them in an AoE, dealing 15,000 damage to anyone there. And another ability that we'll see throughout the rest of the fight is Glass Shards, which is left behind on the ground. So this reduces the speed of anyone in it by 30% and inflicts 1.7k damage every 0.5 seconds. So standing in this can become quite nasty, and it will tie into the final ability that I'll talk about. Now the next ability is Heave Debris. So this is where the Goliath hurls a chunk of debris at a random enemy and inflicts about 9,000 physical damage to the enemies within 6 yards once it hits the ground. And then this again also leaves the Glass Shards debuff on the ground. Now the reason why this is important is that the Goliath's ability Refracted Sin Light, where 4 windows open up on the Goliath and shoot out light beams coming out in 4 different directions. And whilst this happened, it rotates through from where the boss is. The added difficulty is that on Mythic, there is the Light of Atonement buff. So this only allows players into a certain area close around the Goliath itself. So all of these glass shards on the ground can make it quite difficult if there's a lot on the ground and players are having to move through it trying to run from these beams, because if you do get hit by them, they do a serious amount of damage. But other than that, that is the fight. It is a very simple fight, however it needs to be done quickly and cleanly, otherwise it can quickly get out of hand if there's too many debuff zones on the ground, causing players to get stuck in the beams. Now on to the second boss, Echelon. So this is a pretty simple boss. His first ability is Blood Torrent. So Echelon basically shoots out a torrent of blood that sits on the ground that deals 7.3k damage when it hits, but then also if anyone stands in it does a very serious amount of damage, around 3.5k on Mythic difficulty. So you want to try and bait these blood pools to the edge of the room, otherwise it can fill up and become quite difficult. Now the main mechanic that you have to manage throughout this fight is Echelon's Stone Call, in which he calls forth undying stone fiends. I think there is either 10 of them or 8, I'm not entirely sure. However, these little demons come out and it is your job to quickly kill them in the one area. Now this is important because once they are killed, they simply just turn to stone in part of their stone form mechanic. The only way to clear them out of the encounter is by once Echelon reaches up to 100 energy, he will curse someone in the party with Curse of Stone. This player needs to stack on all of the little demons who are dead and in stone form, and after 5 seconds once he jumps on them, it should shatter them all and remove them from the zone. If they are not cleared with the Curse of Stone, they will simply reanimate the next time he uses Stone Call, which in turn will increase the amount of undying stone fiends in the zone and the amount of damage that the group is taking. So this needs to be done well and you will be rewarded for it. It is also important to note that anyone who does get Stone Shattered Leap upon them, they'll be inflicted with a debuff afterwards. So it's important that only one person is getting hit by that leap, as it does 3,000 damage every 2 seconds for 8 seconds. If the entire party gets this, it can quickly become very, very unmanageable. Now onto the third boss, High Adjudicator Elise. Now this fight is in a very, very small encounter zone and can also become very tricky with all of the mechanics that you need to use with the small space that you have. So as the fight progresses, Elise will try and use Bolt of Power and Volley of Power. Now these are spells that she casts out to do roughly about 6,000 damage to the person hit. Now both of these casts are interruptible, so it is important for your group to make sure that there is an interrupter rotation to try and get all of these in order to reduce the amount of healing needed throughout the entire fight. Now the main ability for the group to manage will be the Ghastly Parishioner. So this is a ghost that she summons to fixate on one player and approach them. Now while this ghost is active, its ability Pulse from Beyond causes it to inflict 3.5k shadow damage to all players within 8 yards, and then 870 damage shadow damage to all players every 1 second in the entire instance. So it's very important that what the people in the group who are targeted have to do is lead it towards one of the vessels or the empty vessels that are around the edges of the encounter area. It is important that they do this quickly in order to stop the raid damage, but also to make sure that they look out, they don't want to fill up the anima fountains too much, as they can boil over, which triggers her next ability, which is Anima Fountain. So basically, she just starts channeling this spell, inflicting 9,000 damage to all players within 5 yards. So red swirlies will come up, and it's just the group's job to move out of them. However, it can become very difficult once this happens with a ghost active, everyone trying to move around, trying to lead it to the vessel, but there's also damage on the ground. So that's why it all needs to be done very quickly and very neatly. And the final boss is Lord Chamberlain. So there are a few abilities that we do need to watch out here, and it does require you to have some good spatial awareness in the encounter area to make sure that you're not getting unnecessary damage done to yourself. Now, the first ability you need to look out for is Unleash Suffering. So this is just a cone of damage that comes out from the front of Lord Chamberlain, but it does hit for about 12,000. So you do need to ensure that you're standing behind him at all times. Another ability to look out for is Telekinetic Toss. So this is where he will throw one of the statues that he has at a nearby player, inflicting 10,000 damage and knocking anyone back in its path. Now, I've always found this very difficult to try and judge sort of where it's going to be. The main thing is to just move away from the other players and move away from where the statue is that he's starting to hold up and throw. Now, in conjunction with that, we also have Telekinetic Onslaught. So this is where Lord Chamberlain will pull all of the nearby Sinstone statues towards him, and then they will come in surrounding him in the center, and you can easily see where they're going to push out by the way that they are facing. So simply stand in the gaps to avoid getting hit. Now, once this ability is done, he will generally cast Ritual of Woes. So this is where Lord Chamberlain will send a beam of anima towards each of the Sinstone statues, affecting the player or the statue which stands in it first. So it is important that you do stand in front of it and soak these, and it does not hit the statue. The reason being is that only one player will suffer damage if they soak it. However, if it hits a statue, it will hit every player in the instance. So it's really important to make sure that you have everyone covering that, to make sure that there's not a huge amount of raid damage coming out. And the last ability that we have to look for is Stigma of Pride, and this actually is a healing mechanic that we do need to look for. So what he will do is mark one player with Stigma of Pride, inflicting 3,000 shadow damage every 3 seconds for 18 seconds. However, the kicker to this is that the damage increases by 30% every tick. So as this goes on, the player with the debuff will start to take an immense amount of damage, and this in time with if they get hit with a Telekinetic Toss, or maybe, you know, it links up with someone having to soak the anima beam. This can be a huge amount of damage, and you need to make sure that you are single target focusing them as much as possible, otherwise they will surely die. Now, that's the end for this video. I think this dungeon's really fun. I really do like it. I've done it a fair bit throughout Mythic Plus and everything like that since. Overall, it's a very nice dungeon. It's got a good, you know, balance between the bosses and how they interact. I think it's all really fun. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate all the support. So feel free to like or subscribe for upcoming videos. I do appreciate any comments or likes. Come and watch me on twitch.tv/AuraParty. I stream there as much as I can. I'm streaming WoW content and some other games like that. But again, thank you very much and have a lovely day. All right, bye.